Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Brahmahangsa Brahmadakacharya Asadhara Sadushi Shiman. His Divine Grace Shalasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hariva Slava Zabrani Bhaktam Slava Shri Gurui Shri Gurangi. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tenamane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Bacharane. Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyatiyade Siddharne. Om Agyana Tivanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakans Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanshena Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishubhanu Sudha Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 3, text number, Krishna is the source of all incarnations, text number 30. Etad Rupam Bhagavato Ya Rupasya Chit Atmanaha Maya Gunar Virachitam Mahadadibir Atmani Etad Rupam Bhagavato Ya Rupasya Chit Atmanaha Maya Gunar Virachitam Mahada Dibir Atmani Etad Rupam Bhagavato Ya Rupasya Chidatmanaha Maya Gunar Virachitam Mahadabhivir Atmani Etad Rupam Bhagavato Ya Rupasya Chidatmanaha Maya Gunar Virachitam Mahadabhir Atmani Etat all these Rupam forms Bhagavataha of the Lord He certainly Arupasya of one who is no material form Chidatmanaha of the transcendence Maya material energy Gunai by the qualities Virachitam manufactured Mahat Adibi with the ingredients of matter Atmani in the self. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The conception of the Virat universal form of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form, but factually the Lord has no material form. Please repeat. The conception of the Virat universal form of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form. But factually the Lord has no material form. Purport: the conception of the Lord known as Vishvarupa or the Virat Rupa is particularly not mentioned along with the various incarnations of the Lord, because all the incarnations of the Lord mentioned above are transcendental. And there is not a tinge of materialism in their bodies. There is no difference between the body and self as there is in conditioned soul. The Virat Rupa is conceived for those who are just neophyte worshippers. For them, the material Virat Rupa is presented, and will be explained in the second canto. In the Virat Rupa, the material manifestations of different planets have been conceived as his legs, hands, etc. Actually, all such descriptions are for the neophytes. The neophytes cannot conceive of anything beyond matter. The material conception of the Lord is not counted in the list of his factual forms. As Paramatma or a super soul, the Lord is within each and every material form, and even within the atoms. But the outward material form is but an imagination, both for the Lord and for the living being. The present forms of the conditioned souls are also not factual. The conclusion is that the material conception of the body of the Lord as Virat is imaginary. Both the Lord and the living beings are living spirits and have original spiritual bodies. Text again. Etad rupam bhagavato ya rupasya chiratmanaha maya gunar virachitam mahada divir atmani. The conception of the Virat universal form of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form. But factually, the Lord has no material form. Namo Vishnu Vraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyadyade Satarna. Prabhupada used to use the analogy of the rope and the snake. We may see a rope and imagine that it's a snake and become fearful. And then we may discover that it's actually not a snake, it's a rope. Now, the conception of the rope as a snake is imagination, but that doesn't mean that there's no rope. Similarly, in the material world, what we conceive of it is imagination, but that doesn't mean there's no material world. We just conceive of it according to our particular conditioned life. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, and actually the actual only reality is spirit. Reality in the sense that something that's going to be maintained. For instance, if we fall in love with a object in this material world, but the next moment it changes or disappears, then what happens to our love for that object? In the material world, at least. Or we'd love a young woman when she's young and beautiful, but when she gets old, when her body changes, then we no longer love her anymore in the same way. So which is the reality? The young girl or the old woman? None of them are real because they're just combinations and permutations of the material energy. In other words, Krishna says, Bhumir apanalo vayu kamano buddha evacha ahankara iti yame bina prakriti ashrita. That the material nature consists of only earth, water, fire, air, intelligence, and false ego. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Now, if you find a bag on the street which is full of earth and water and other ingredients, we generally wouldn't want to take it home with us. But if that same bag has a certain shape, then we fall in love with it and we want to take it home with us. But actually it's the same ingredients, it's just a slightly different form, that's all. So our imagination is that we're conceiving the material world as something that really isn't. If you see a young, beautiful girl and you peel off just 1 inch of skin, you're no longer attracted to that young, beautiful girl anymore. Although you have the skin And the same body is there for some time, but actually it's not attractive anymore. So our attraction is based upon our conception of what we conceive of something beautiful, but we don't really look very deeply into what we consider beautiful. The famous story of the woman, the princess, and some prince came to her, saw her, and he became attracted to her beauty and said, I want to enjoy with you. And the woman said, yes, no problem, just come back in a week. So for the whole week she took purgatives and collected and passed stool and collected everything in different containers. And when the prince came next week, she said yes. This woman answered the door. She was haggard and not very attractive. And said, the prince said, I've come here for that young, beautiful princess. I want to enjoy with her. She promised me this week I could do it. And the old woman said, this haggard woman said, yes, here I am. He said, no, I want the young, beautiful princess, not you. She said, no, I'm the same person. He said, how can this possible? She said, because I've conserved all my beauty in different pots for you, so you can enjoy. So the prince came into the house, into whatever it was, the palace, and she pointed out these very foul-smelling pots full of bile and mucus and stool and vomit, and said, here's my beauty, enjoy. And then the prince realized that this is his so-called attraction, which is based on illusion. But maya daiviyesha gunamayi, mama maya dharatya, mama eva ye prapadyante, mayam etam tarandite. This material nature is very difficult to overcome. It consists of the three modes of material nature. Only those who have taken shelter of me can easily cross beyond it. So just by understanding we could say, not substantiality, that it's not substantial, it's not permanent, it's not enough for liberation from the material concepts of life. Attachment and aversion are two sides of the same coin. Only when one becomes attracted to the superior energy, the spiritual energy, vishaya vinivartante nirharasya dehinam, rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishvani vartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, one becomes fixed in consciousness. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come, and he's given us an opportunity to experience reality. The only reality in this material world, in one sense, is the ecstatic chanting of the holy name. Everything else is unreal. And if we think something is real, except for the ecstatic chanting of the holy name, which would include Krishna's name, his form, his quality, his pastimes, his associates, everything there is included in the ecstatic chanting of the holy name. If we think something else is real besides that, then we're in illusion. Therefore, throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is trying to explain to us what are the different symptoms of illusion and how to get out of it, how to get into the reality of the spiritual energy. For instance, in the 5th chapter, Krishna says, Naiva, let's see, what does he say? Naiva kinchit karomiti, yukta manyate tattvavid. Pashan, Srinvan, Sprishan, Jigran, Ashnan, Gachan, Svapan, Svasan, Pralapan, Vishijan, Grinan, Umishani, Mishanapi, Indriyarandiyarteshu, Vartanta iti darya. Naiva kinchit karomiti. That not neva, not certainly, kinchit, at any time. Karo means iti. I'm not doing anything. Naiva kinchit karomiti, that yukta manyate tattva. One who's actually in contact with reality, with the spiritual energy, one who's actually conscious of Krishna, he understands, naiva kinchit karomiti, that at no time is the soul in the material world directly doing anything. So that's an illusion. Why are we in illusion? Because we're not fully in contact with the spiritual energy, and therefore we're imagining that we're the doers of our activities. But the more we come in contact with yukta manyate tattvavit, with the tattvavit, with reality, then the more we can see what? Pashan, Srinvan, Sprishan, Jigran, Ashnanga, Chan, Swapan, Swaswan. Although we may be Pashan, seeing, Pashan, Pashan, Sparshan. Is that right? Let's see if we got the order right here. Pashan Shrinvan. Everyone knows what Shrinvan means. What does it mean? Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravanam Kirtana. You've heard that before? Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravanam Kirtana. Shrinvan. It's the same in Croatian. Is probably the word is slušit. Slišit. Slišit. What's that? Slušit. Yeah, that's right. Slušit. Let's see. Service is probably slušit, and is service is slušit. Služiti. Well, it's Russian is služat. That's the infinitive. And slišit in Russian is to hear. So that Shrinvan, some is at least both start with an S. Service and hearing. Pashan, Shrinvan, Sprishan. Sprishan, Sparshati. What does Sparshati mean? To touch, yes. Jigran, Jiva. What does Jiva mean? Not Jiva, Jiva. Tongue, yes. Tongue, let's see. Jiva. Here is Jigran, smelling. With Sanskrit, let's see, Jiva, Jiva Pastati. Well, I guess it's Bengali. It's probably Sanskrit too. Jigran, smelling. Actually, it's smelling. It's not touch. It's not. Jigran. Ashnan. Everyone knows Ashnan. Yes. Ashnan's Gachan. Gachati. Gachati is somehow, that's Sanskrit. Actually, this is Gachati. Idati. Going, yes. Gachan, Sparshan. No, Swapnan. Swapnan. What's that? Dreaming. Sprishan. Swasan. Oh, Swasan. Swapan, Swasan. One is dreaming and the other is Swasan. Swayoga. Breathing. So again, sparsha. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukta manyate tattvavit pashan shrinvan sparshan jigran ashnangachan swapan swasan. That he knows that although he's seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, while eating, while breathing, while going about, while dreaming, and while breathing, he knows that only the materials, that he knows that he does nothing at all. So Krishna includes all the different senses, the organs of action and the organs of perception. Gachan is walking about the gross senses, smelling, touching, seeing, hearing, and then the subtle sense, swasan, breathing, a little more subtle, and then even subtler, swapnan, dreaming, the mind. That we're doing nothing at all. Does that surprise anyone? Does anyone believe that? Because pralapan vishijan grinan imishani mishanapi indriyarniyarteshu vartanta iti daryan. Pralapan, what does pralapa mean? This prajalpa, but this is prajalpan. Talking. Prajalpan vishrijan grinan, while receiving, vishrijan, giving up and receiving, which I guess, vishrijan grinan, umishani mishanapi, while opening and closing his eyes, he knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. So does anyone feel aloof from all these things? When we're blissfully in Krishna consciousness, then we feel aloof from all those things. Matter of fact, when we're dreaming at night, we become aloof from this body and we enter into another subtle body usually. Of course, we don't remember our dreams all the time. But if you do wake up and remember your dream, you were in a different body. We had different sense of smelling and seeing. Sometimes in dreams, at least we see in dreams. We may not remember how we were feeling, unless it was a nightmare. Maybe we don't remember how we were tasting, but at least we remember how we were seeing. Therefore, at least theoretically, we should understand. Naiva kinchit karomi ti yuktamanyate tattvavet pashan srinvan srishan jigran ashnanga chan swapan shwasan pralapan vishrijan grinan imishana mishanapi indriyarndiarteshu vartanta iti darina. At least theoretically we have to accept that this body's working, but I'm actually not doing anything. I'm desiring, and Krishna is Paramatma within my heart. He senses my desire just like one can understand the flavor of a flower by smelling it. And then he arranges through his energy, either spiritual or material, that we do certain activities. We, meaning the body, goes through certain activities, and we experience those activities through our consciousness. But we're not doing anything material because we're not part of the material energy. Anadidvam nirgunadvat paramatmayam avyam sharira stopikondhyana karoti nanalipyate. That those who can see with the eyes of eternity can see that the soul is eternal, transcendental, and beyond the modes of material nature. Despite contact with the material body or Arjuna, the soul is neither doing anything nor is he entangled. So, not only we're not doing anything, but we're not even entangled in the material world. Oil doesn't mix with water. It may apparently shake it up, it apparently mixes, but as soon as you let it settle, it all separates again. So only because our consciousness is involved in matter, we're imagining that we're part of the material energy, but we have nothing to do with the material energy. Does that mean that we're wasting our time here? Well, that's what we're doing. We're wasting our time here. We're just imagining that we're in a certain circumstance. But the next moment, our circumstances change, and everything that went before us, we forget about because it wasn't real. It had nothing to do with our real self. The real self is transcendental, and only when we wake up to our relationship with Krishna that we actually become alive again. Otherwise, we're just spending our whole existence, eternity, for now, since time immemorial, just dreaming that we're in different material circumstances, but not really doing anything material or spiritual. Just wasting our time. Trying to be happy, abrahma bhuvana, mamupetya punarjanma, dukhalyam ashasvatam, napnuvanti mahatmana, samsiddhim paramangata. Mamupetya punarjanma. After obtaining me, mamupetya punarjanma, these living entities never take birth again, because they have obtained the highest destination. Mamupetya punarjanma, dukhalyam ashasvatam. They don't come back to this temporary dukhalyam, full of misery, ashasvatam, temporary material world full of misery. Mamupetya punarjanma, dukhalyam ashasvatam, napnuvanti mahatmana. Such great souls, napnuvanti mahatmana, samsiddhir, mamupetya punarjanma, dukhalyam ashasvatam, napnuvanti param devam, paranti paramangatim. Sounds like it would be a good verse. I wonder if it's actually what Krishna said. Mamupetya punarjanma dukhalyam ashasvatam, napnuvanti punarjanma dukhalyam samsiddhim paramangatim. Yeah, that's what Krishna said, I guess. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries, because they have obtained the highest perfection. So we have to we should know that we're not the doer, but we're the desirer. And we can see, how can we see our desires? By what we're doing. If we wrote down everything we were doing during the day, probably wouldn't be so embarrassed. If we wrote down everything we were thinking during the day, we might be a little bit more embarrassed. Therefore, we should know that neither grossly or subtly, or we should know that grossly and subtly we should be engaged in Krishna's service. And if there are gaps, then we should try to fill, in that service, we should try to fill it up, both grossly and subtly. Then, how to do that? Arjuna asked that question. He didn't think, well, all right, I'm in Maya, so what? He asked Krishna, what is the symptom of a person who's not in Maya? What's that verse in the 14th chapter? Arjuna's question. He asked the question everyone should be asking. Gunanetan atitra. Oh no. Arjuna vacha king lingas chingunaneta atito bhavati prabho kimacharya gataschai nam chai tams chinguna ativartate. He has three questions. Arjuna vacha tri karalingas tri gunan etan. Arjuna's symptom. By what symptoms is known who is transcendental to these three modes? Not only we should see by the symptoms of other people, we should know by what symptoms we're transcendental to the three modes. In other words, we're not just trying to look at everyone else, trying to figure out if they're transcendental. We should figure out by what symptoms I should have that I'll know I'm transcendental. Karalingas tringunan etan atito bhavati prabho. What is his behavior? So we should know how we should be acting so that we're transcendental. Karalingas tringunan etan atito bhavati prabho. Kimacharya katams chayanam chaitams chingunat and divartate. And how does he transcend these three modes of material nature? So this is very important for us to know these things. And what's the answer? Does anyone know what Krishna says is the answer? Since we've been in the Hare Krišna movement for decades, maybe we should know what the answer is. Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Prakasham cha pravritim cha moham eva cha pandava, nedveshti sampravritani nivritani kankshati. Udasinad vadasinam guno adas gunaryo na vichalyate gunavartanti ityevam yovatishati nengate samaduka sakaswasta samalostrasmakangshana tulya priya priya dhiras tulya netatma samstiti manapramaya tulyas tulya mitrari pakshayo sarvaramba parityagi gunartita uchite. So the answer to the first question of my dear Lord, what symptoms one known who's transcendental to these three modes? So Krishna says prakasham. What does prakasha mean? What does prakash mean? Yes. Prakasham cha nivritim cha. What is nivritim? Yes, that's right. Actually, it's prakasham cha pravritim cha is pravritim. What's that? Accepting, attachment. Prakasham cha pravritim cha moha. Yes, illusion. Moham eva cha pandava. Nedveshti sampravritani. Dveshti? No, that's dvandva. Dveshti. Rag and dveshti. It comes first, it starts out with avidya, then it goes to avesha, false ego, then rag and dveshti. Attachment and aversion. So, prakasham cha pravritim cha moham eva cha pandava nedveshti sampravritani ninevritani kankshati. So one who doesn't become Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, I guess it's pretty rare anyone else. I guess sometimes people hate illumination. They actually hate it. For instance, if you want to be God, and someone comes along and tells you you're not God, you don't like that illumination. One who doesn't hate illumination, attachment and delusion when they are present, nor longs from when they disappear. Is that in those lines? Nivritti, Kankshati. So, when we're faced with illumination, when we're faced with attachment, when we're faced to delusion, we should not get disturbed by them. Instead, we should remember that we're aloof from all this, and that one should try to fix the mind upon Krishna. Not become attached to illumination. Now I've realized something, I'm so great. Krishna will prove to us, or Maya will prove to us the next moment, we're not as great as we think we are. Or when we're attached to something, we fall in love with something or someone, we should realize that this is just illusion. There's no real, what am I falling in love with? What is this all about? And when we're in a delusion and we're bewildered, we shouldn't get so disturbed either, realizing that this is just temporary, that reality is there when we're chanting Hare Krishna. When Dhruva Maharaj was faced with a big delusion, when the Yakshas were trying to kill him, and they threw a whole ocean at him by their mystic power, they created an ocean which is rushing towards him. And then on the other side, there were vicious animals like tigers and lions racing to eat him. And there were rocks falling from the sky, boulders falling, mountains falling from the sky. He was an illusion. These were created by illusion. Of course, the whole material world is illusion, so their mystic power, if you just stood there, you might get washed away or eaten by these animals that were created. But what did he do to counteract it? He chanted Hare Krishna, and then it all went away. So that's the whole idea. Whatever our situation is, keep on chanting, and it'll go away. Then reality will set in. And Udasinadvarasino guna yona vichalyate guna vartanti yovatishtit nengate. Who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions and the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active. So that's what we should think. The modes are active, but I'm different from the modes. Samaduka sakaswasta samulastrasma kangshana tulya priyat priyo tulyastya ninatma samsiti. Who's situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal towards the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame. Manapamanayo tulyas tulyamitnatma samsiti. Manapamanayo tulyas tulya midrari pakshayo savaramba prityagi gunati taksa uchite. So first, the gross things we look upon equally, and then the subtle things, praise and blame, friends and enemies, and if those who are indifferent and impartial. This Krishna keeps on repeating throughout Bhagavad Gita. Who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities, such a person is said to be transcended the modes of material nature. And how to do it? How do we do it? How do we remain in this equal consciousness beyond the material energy? How is it possible? What's the answer to that? That's what Arjuna asks. What the symptoms are, person who transcended. So Krishna spoke that in 4 verses. And now he gives 1 verse to explain how does one transcend? How does one transcend? Does anyone have any idea? Anyone's been in the Hare Krišna movement for a while, have some idea how you transcend the modes of nature? Yes. Good. Mam chayo vyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityayitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One is engaged in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and it comes to the level of Brahman. Is that the perfection, though? Brahman? What's beyond that? How does one actually transcend completely the material nature? Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vichasya cha shasvatasya dharmasya sukasya kantikasya cha. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immoral, imperishable, and eternal, and the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So by unalloyed devotional service or undeviated devotional service, one comes to the platform of nishta, steady devotional service. And beyond that is ruchi, asakti, bhava, and prema. That's then one is actually completely beyond the modes of material nature, when one realizes one's eternal relation with Krishna. Then one is no more illusion. Then the material world is seen as simply as part of the spiritual world. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? You were expecting a different conclusion from this class? Yes. There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, and more or less in every chapter the conclusion is the same. If someone gives a class, probably it's best he gives the same conclusion that Krishna gave in the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Yes?
So someone may say, okay, I'm not the doer, but I have my bills to pay, I have some needs, and I need to do some work to maintain this body, so how to understand
Well,
this?
since you're an illusion, of course you have to do these things. If you were an illusion, you wouldn't have to do these things. Krishna might want you to do these things. You may dovetail your desire with Krishna's, and Krishna does these things for you. But if you're in illusion, of course you have to do these things, because you're being forced by the modes of material nature to do them. Your desire is a dovetail to do these things, because you're in illusion. So does that mean we shouldn't do these things, thinking I'm an illusion? Why should I follow? No. We should do them for Krishna, though. We should add Krishna. Or else we won't get out of illusion while we're doing these things. Anything else?
Just to follow up. How much should we invest in this, maintaining the body? And
I don't know. It depends what kind of body you have. If you have an eternally beautiful body, then you should probably invest a lot in it. It depends how, if you have a body that never gets sick, no problem with it, then you should still be careful. You should especially be careful. Because when you get sick, then you won't know what to do. Because you have no experience with it. So we have to salt the taste, Prabhupada used to say. If you have salt, and you add it to food, you just add enough so it tastes good. But if you add not enough, then it's tasteless. If you add too much, you can't eat it. So you just do enough to maintain the body so it's fit for Krishna's service. Is that right? No. Okay. Anything else? And now we do the best we can. We have sadhana. There we have sadhana vikalpa. So we do at least that, and hopefully by getting a higher taste, gradually we reduce what we think is our necessities. For Prahladananda Swami, a little bit of buttermilk every other day was too much. But we can't imitate Prahladananda Swami. Yes. Question? Did you have a question? No. Kradharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.